but he lived three lives for his entire life. He claimed that and told people that his middle name was Patrick when in fact it was Philip. He lowered his age by a year, which is kind of standard practice for a ball player. But he said repeatedly, and he may have even started it, that he was born in Tralee, Ireland. Later on, he got to be known as the Duke of Tralee. He played that Irishness for his whole career. And in 1943, the year he died, he went down to the Lucas County Courthouse here in Toledo and registered his own birth and did it the right way. And he told the Blade reporter, the Toledo newspaper reporter, I didn't want to die in a lie.
That was John Hussman, author of the book Roger Bresnahan, A Baseball Life. Hello and welcome to episode 114 of the Irish Baseball Podcast. I'm your host, Rick Becker. John Hussman will be my guest on the show today. I want to thank all of you who post on the Irish American Baseball Society's social media pages. One of our members posted on Facebook that he saw Hussman speak about Bresnahan, and that's when I got the idea to reach out to Hussman. Let's get things started right now. Thanks for being here, John.
Thank you. I'm going to enjoy talking to you. I can tell already. I love to talk about Roger Bresnahan.
All right, so then let's just get to it. Who was Roger Bresnahan, and why is he an important figure for people who want to know more about the history of baseball?
Well, Roger Bresnahan is he's kind of a local story here in Toledo. He's the only Toledoan in the Baseball Hall of Fame. Played in the dead ball era. Most people don't know him at all or have even heard of him, even here in Toledo. But his contributions to baseball, I think, were great. Not only was he in the Hall of Fame, but he transformed the position of catcher in a couple of ways that we can talk about a little later. But he was one of the premier players of the dead ball era. And I like to start out by just giving people a hint of that by giving a short quote, which is the epigraph in my book, by a sports writer by the name of Sheridan, who was in St. Louis for about 30 years. He saw Bresnahan's whole career. He saw everybody in both leagues in his writing career, so he was a fair guy to make comparisons. But he wrote in 1926, no man except perhaps Cobb exerted so great an individual force in a ball game, either behind the bat, at the bat, or on the bases as Bresnahan. And I think that's rather high praise, and it comes from a man that saw him play and saw all his contemporaries play as well. So I like to put my stock in primary sources like this and count on the people that saw him play for their opinions, even more than the advanced metrics that we have now that do a fair job, I think, of making general comparisons across eras, but it's very tough to do that fairly, I think. But the people that saw him knew what they saw, and they wrote about it, and that's what I relied on as the basis for my book.
Well, I think even the people who support and do the advanced metrics will say that looking back this far is a little bit of a challenge, and they do try to take into consideration a lot of what was said about them. I think one of the great things about the metrics is you can use them to sort of look at what people are saying about him. So when you hear those quotes about him and then you look at the numbers, which I have right in front of me, they certainly tell that exact story. For the dead ball era, yes, he doesn't have a lot of pop, 26 career home runs, but that wasn't the game back then. People weren't hitting home runs like that back then. But if you look at just his offense compared to the rest of the league, he was always above average until very, very late in his career. And not just a little bit above average, but he was head and shoulders above everybody else. He was hitting, he had a year where he hit 350. he had, years where he's 283, 333, like he was putting up these big numbers. And then, like you said, you have the primary sources who actually saw him play and can say, well, those numbers aren't fool's gold.
Well, that's true, I'm glad you've looked at those numbers. One that I always look at is his career batting average, and I can't. It's in the high 270s, which doesn't sound like much today, but that's better than 50 points over the league average over the dead ball era. So that shows you he was far and away a better hitter than the average player. And one metric that I like to quote because it's very favorable to my argument is his OPS plus for his career, which was 126, which happens to be the same as Johnny Bench's. So I think that's a big boost for my support of Roger.
Yeah, I mean, that is one of the numbers I was looking at as well. I think that the thing I like about OPS Plus is it compares them to the other players of their era. And you can see 279 with a 386 on base percentage and a 377 slugging. And that doesn't sound like much. But when you look at that OPS, you can see that even when you take in his early years and his late years, he's still 25% better than the average player. And that's incredible. He was very, very valuable. And when you talk about him being a catcher, you haven't mentioned it yet, but you mentioned it in the book, the shin guards.
Right.
He was an innovator with shin guards, but he wasn't just a catcher. He had incredible versatility. He played catcher, he was a center fielder, he played some infield. Like he was all over the diamond, a very, very valuable player.
Well, that he was. I'm glad you mentioned his versatility. He started out as a pitcher, as an amateur. He was a pitcher, and he broke into the majors as a pitcher, but quickly washed out for John McGraw in Baltimore. Uh, and he started catching there when McGraw needed a backup catcher. But he played a year and a half in Baltimore for McGraw before McGraw moved to New York, and he caught about 90 games, and he played several infield positions and two in the outfield. So he was a very versatile and valuable player. And when I mentioned McGraw moving to New York, and that's a story in itself, as we all know. But he took Roger and four other of those Baltimoreans along to be the building blocks of those Giants teams. So he recognized that versatility in his offense very early on when he was a pitcher.
So, what type of fame would Bresnahan have had at the time? He's not a household name anymore, but he was playing baseball when baseball was the most popular sport in America. He was playing it in the biggest media market in America. Would he have been a celebrity in his day?
He absolutely was a celebrity. He was in his Giant years and following all his major league years. He was during the season was in the news virtually every day, and most of the time year round. He was a very popular guy. One example of that was that great 1908 season we had with the great races in both leagues. He caught 130, 39 games, more than anybody had before, played through numerous injuries, and really gutted it out through a tough season. Late in that year, 1908, the Evening World in New York ran a contest, a vote among their readers, asking which one of the Giants had contributed the most to the Giants' effort to win the pennant. That's the year that Mathewson won 35 games, and just it was lights out. In that poll, Roger uh, outpointed Mathewson 4-1, which is just unbelievable to me. That tells you how popular he was in New York, which, as you said, was the media center of the world as it is now. But he was a very popular guy and well known in baseball circles.
And how much does the city of Toledo, like you mentioned, he is from Toledo, Do they do anything to kind of honor him? Does he have a statue? Does he have any sort of recognition in the town so that his legacy can continue and maybe be an inspiration to kids growing up playing baseball in Toledo?
Well, I'm working on that. That's one of the purposes of the book. And I like to, when I talk to people, I say I like to introduce my friend Roger Bresnahan. And I say introduce because people really don't know him here. And I think he's my friend because I've been researching him so long. I feel like I know him. But we have have for a number of years a very nice display of some of his artifacts and things about him in a historical display at the Mud Hens Ballpark, Fifth Third Field in downtown Toledo. We've written about him. There have been a number of things in the news from time to time, but no monuments yet. But we're still working on
that. Well, I hope that we play a small part in getting more and more attention on his name. So maybe that in the future, some of those monuments will go up. He was elected into the Hall of Fame by what was then called the Old Timers Committee. Unfortunately, he was inducted the year after he passed. Do you think that his passing played a part in that vote? Or do you think that he was finally going to get his due at some point?
Well, the sympathy vote has been mentioned by many people, and that could have had something to do with it. But he also had several people voting there that saw him play and knew him. But he was on the ballot, every ballot, and garnered votes, and was increasing as the years went on, leading up to 1944 when he was finally elected. He wasn't real close, but he was in there every year. But 45, that Veterans Committee did see fit to put him in. And as I said, there were people there that knew him and saw him play.
It's kind of unfortunate. One of the players that I thought for years should have been in the Hall of Fame and just recently got elected is Dick Allen.
Mm-hmm.
He had just passed. He didn't ever get to hear that he was going to get into the Hall. For Bresnahan, I would imagine that, you know, even though I'm sure he was very proud of his career, I think it is probably something that he wanted and he would have loved to have had his, you know, ability recognized in this way.
You're absolutely right. And I don't have much to say about what he really thought about that, but he was certainly aware of being on the ballot. He remained very close to baseball for his entire life and was active in it. He spent his whole life, and he never left Toledo. He spent his whole life here. And when he was, one of the sad parts about that was he did not receive a plaque until in the 1960s. He wasn't officially inducted until then. But the good part of that was he had a couple of grandnephews that got to go to the ceremonies of the 60s and see it. And they remember that very well.
When we talk about the Irish American Baseball Society and the Irish Baseball Podcast, I kind of want to ask about his Irish roots because I know they were there, but I think he might have even been a little confused about them. Am I correct about that?
His Irish roots were definitely there, but he wasn't confused about them. His genealogy is rather interesting. Both his parents were born in County Kerry, Ireland, and they're making their way to Toledo was kind of a long and laborious route. They spent some time in London, had some children there. Roger's mother had 8, and 4 were born in London and 4 were born in Toledo. His father, Michael, came to New York City all alone. A couple of years later, he was joined by his mother, Mary, and 4 of the children, 3 of the children, excuse me. A couple of years later, she went back with 2 of the kids, left the older boy here. A while after that, came back to New York with, again, 3 kids, but not the same 3 she had the first time. And then they moved on to Toledo. I don't know what brought him to Toledo. But as I said, he not only lived his whole life in Toledo, but he lived his whole life in the same near neighborhood. But his Irishness was legitimate. But he lived three lives for his entire life. He claimed that and told people that his middle name was Patrick when in fact it was Philip. He lowered his age by a year, which is kind of standard practice for a ball player. But he said repeatedly, and he may have even started it, that he was born in Tralee, Ireland. Later on, he got to be known as the Duke of Tralee. He played that Irishness for his whole career. And in 1943, the year he died, he went down to the Lucas County Courthouse here in Toledo and registered his own birth and did it the right way. And he told the Blade reporter, the Toledo newspaper reporter, I didn't want to die in a lie. So he wasn't mixed up about it. He did it.
Okay, so the confusion was self-caused in that situation.
It was cause for self-promotion. It didn't hurt to be Irish to play baseball in those days, especially for a guy named McGraw.
Yeah, I tell you what, I had my Irish grandfather used to tell meaningless lies like that all the time if people would believe him. So it definitely makes him seem a little more Irish to me. Toledo at the time, were there a lot of Irish immigrants here? Was it a city that was separated by ethnicity? Did his Irishness help him? Did it hurt him?
There were a lot of Irish in Toledo, and we had a lot of several neighborhoods in Toledo. The Irish neighborhood was one of the predominant ones. We had a big Polish community and a big German community, and Hungarian, but they were pretty much neighborhood groups that stuck together. There was a huge church in downtown Toledo, still is a beautiful church, St. Patrick's, where his family worshipped, and I believe he went to school. And they moved to the outskirts of the city when he was a young boy and went to another church that was St. Anne's, which was an all Irish Catholic church. So he was all Irish in an all Irish neighborhood. Not all Irish. One of his neighbors a block behind him was German, and they had a German daughter that he married. It was in those days that was actually a mixed marriage with a German Protestant and an Irish Catholic, but they did it in St. Anne's Catholic Church.
So, John, while Roger was playing in the big leagues, was there a lot of support in the Toledo area for him? Like, would the regular people of Toledo be following Roger's career because he was the hometown boy? Or would they gravitate more towards the closer major league teams and not necessarily follow individual players like that?
Well, I don't know, but what I can tell you is the newspapers covered him heavily in Toledo. Uh, we had a team in the American Association all the years he was playing, which was not very good, but it was very popular, and that received a lot of press too. Uh, so I really can't tell you how the people felt about him, but they were exposed to him through the media. And as I said, he spent his whole life in Toledo, and his family was here, and so I would think that yes, most people were aware of him and followed him and supported him.
And then you have another great title, and that is you are the official team historian for the Toledo Mud Hens.
I am that.
So, what does that entail? That's such an interesting title, and it sounds like the greatest job in the world.
It's a wonderful job. I enjoy it. I think I might have mentioned I've been doing that for 25 years, and it's a fun job. I do a couple of little statistical things keeping career records for everybody that played here and that sort of thing. I've done a lot of contributed a lot of writing to them. I've done for years. We built a new ballpark in downtown Toledo in 2002. And we've had a big hand in decor there and emphasizing our history. We've had an awful lot of good players. We've had 17 Hall of Famers come through Toledo. We've had few winners, but a lot of good ball players. I do occasional bits on TV and radio and that sort of thing. Try to keep the history alive, like I'm doing with Roger.
That's great. And one of the things that we love to talk about is the importance of minor league baseball. Just very recently, the minor leagues, they reduced the number of teams. And I think that the owners are going to be trying to reduce them even more in a future collective bargaining agreement. And can you just talk about what you think is the importance of minor league baseball?
Well, I think that's where most people have an opportunity to see baseball in this country. And as you said, the contraction has taken that away from 40 of our small towns. I think that's pretty tough, and I agree with you. I don't think that's going to be the end of it. The business is getting bigger and bigger, but the number of places to go see ball games are getting fewer and fewer. I think the Major League Baseball is going to be counting more and more on the colleges to be their minor leagues, emulate what football does. And I don't know if that'll work or not, but I think a lot of people are going to miss baseball because of it. There are people in the west of this country that just will never see a ball game now.
And I think the Toledo Mud Hens are a really great example of how a city can rally behind a minor league baseball team. Like, you think about the bigger cities and their major league clubs, and yes, it is an identity in Baltimore that the Orioles are part of their identity, and in New York, the Yankees and the Mets are part of the identity. But like, I have known about the Toledo Mud Hens my entire life.
That's great to hear.
Right. Is part of that because, I grew up watching MASH, and, Jamie Farr always wore the Toledo Mud Hens jersey as Klinger. But that's just showing the connection between these teams and the people who live there and the pride they have. I grew up around Reading, Pennsylvania, and that's been a long partnership between the Phillies and the Reading Phillies.
Uh-huh.
And you have these towns that connect with their minor league teams. And I wonder if you could just speak about that as an historian, as somebody who, follows the game and knows the traditions of the game, how important those minor league teams were in making baseball the biggest sport in the country for a good half century.
Well, that's easy. The short answer is that there was baseball everywhere to be seen, everywhere in the country, not only the minor leagues, but amateur leagues. And when Roger grew up playing here in Toledo in the late 1890s, there was a one city league that with probably a dozen teams in it that was played top flight baseball. And it traveled and from one town to another. And that's in addition to the professional team we had. And one thing that I think works in Toledo's favor is we've had the Mud Hen name for our professional team ever since 1896, with a couple of exceptions. So that name has been around for a long, long time. People are proud of it, and they know it. When I talk about Roger to groups, people don't know Roger, as I said before, but when I mentioned he was an owner of the Mud Hens for 8 years, that hook pulls them right in. They know what that means. That draws them in. And another thing we have going here that's, I think, helps is that our parent club, the Tigers, are just an hour away. That proximity I think helps create interest here too, because we see players come through here and they're just up the road an hour. People here go to ball games in Detroit and Toledo, see both. So those players that go up there are known to us, and sometimes we see them again. They come back down for a while, and so that does a lot, I think, to create interest, having that proximity to the major league team, and everybody's done that now. but not quite as close as us.
John Hussman, author of the book Roger Bresnahan, A Baseball Life. Thank you for coming on the show and really shedding a light on a real forgotten, legitimate Hall of Fame baseball player.
Well, you are welcome. I appreciate the opportunity to spread the word, so to speak, and I hope your listeners enjoy this.
That was John Hussman, author of the book Roger Bresnahan, A Baseball Life. I'm your host, Rick Becker, and this has been episode 114 of the Irish Baseball Podcast.